It all began on a seemingly ordinary January evening. Keanu Reeves, known for his humility and compassion as much as his Hollywood stardom, was at home in the Hollywood Hills when news of the disaster reached him. A wildfire had erupted on the city's outskirts, driven by relentless winds that transformed it into a blazing inferno within hours. Streets were gridlocked, families were forced to abandon their homes, and evacuation centers were overwhelmed with terrified evacuees. Keanu could have stayed safe, watching the tragedy unfold from the comfort of his home. But as images of burning neighborhoods and desperate families filled the screen, he knew he couldn't just sit by. "I can't do everything, but I can do something," he told himself, as he packed his SUV with water, blankets, and medical supplies. What started as a single act of kindness quickly turned into a mission that would inspire an entire city. Keanu could have stayed safe, watching the tragedy unfold from the comfort of his home. But as images of burning neighborhoods and desperate families filled the screen, he knew he couldn't just sit by. "I can't do everything, but I can do something," he told himself, as he packed his SUV with water, blankets, and medical supplies. What started as a single act of kindness quickly turned into a mission that would inspire an entire city. As Keanu navigated the smoke-filled streets of Los Angeles, his mission became clear: to reach those stranded in the chaos. The city was unrecognizable. Flames danced on the horizon, casting an eerie orange glow across the skyline. Traffic was at a standstill, with frightened families honking their horns in desperation. Ash fell from the sky like snow, coating the streets in a haunting reminder of what was being lost. Turning onto a quieter road to avoid the gridlock, Keanu spotted a woman on the side of the road. She held a crying toddler in one arm while her older child clutched her leg, his suitcase dragging behind him. Her car sat lifeless, hood up, smoke curling from its engine. Without hesitation, Keanu pulled over, rolling down his window. "Do you need help?" he asked gently. His voice cut through the panic like a lifeline. The woman hesitated, then nodded, her voice cracking as she explained their situation. Her phone was dead, and they had nowhere to go. Keanu stepped out of the car and helped load their belongings into his SUV. As he secured the toddler's car seat, he noticed the mother's hands trembling, her eyes darting nervously toward the advancing smoke. On the drive to the nearest evacuation center, Keanu handed the children bottles of water and reassured the mother. "You're safe now. Just focus on your kids. I'll take care of the rest." The woman's eyes filled with gratitude, though she didn't yet realize who her rescuer was. At the evacuation center, the scene was overwhelming. Families huddled together on cots. Volunteers scrambled to distribute food and blankets, and the air buzzed with a mix of fear and exhaustion. Keanu stayed to ensure the woman and her children were registered and had a safe place to rest before heading back out. The devastation he witnessed that night changed him. This wasn't just a fire, it was a test of humanity. And Keanu wasn't about to fail it. But before I share the next chapter of this incredible story, let's take a moment to connect. Where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. And if you believe in the power of kindness, hit that like button. It's amazing how even the smallest act can make a world of difference. Keanu's determination only grew stronger. Little did he know, the road ahead would test not just his courage, but his very limits. What happened next would shock everyone, proving that true heroes are made in the moments when hope seems lost. As the night deepened, Keanu's SUV weaved through the darkened streets, its headlights cutting through the dense smoke that hung heavy in the air. He had barely caught his breath after leaving the evacuation center when he spotted another figure in distress. On the side of a narrow road, an elderly couple stood beside a small, overloaded car. The man was hunched over, attempting to push the vehicle, while his wife clutched a small box, her face streaked with soot and tears. Keanu slowed down and rolled down his window, calling out, "Do you need a hand?" The old man turned, his face lined with exhaustion and despair. "Our home, it's gone," he said, his voice trembling. "We tried to take what little we could, but the car won't start, and we don't know where to go." Keanu stepped out without hesitation, his steady presence immediately calming the couple. "Let's get you somewhere safe," he said reassuringly. He opened the back of his SUV and helped them transfer their belongings: a few photo albums, a quilt, and a small cage containing a frightened cat, into his car. The woman hesitated, her hands clutching the box tightly. "It's all we have left," she whispered, looking at him with tearful eyes. Keanu placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I promise, we'll keep it safe." As they drove toward the evacuation center, the elderly couple shared fragments of their life. They had lived in their house for over 40 years, raising children and celebrating milestones within its walls. Now, everything they'd built was reduced to ash. Keanu listened intently, nodding and offering words of comfort. "Sometimes, we lose the things we've built," he said softly. "But what you've created, your memories, your love for each other, that's what really matters, and that can never be destroyed." At the center, Keanu helped the couple settle in, carrying their belongings and ensuring they had everything they needed. When the woman handed him the box she had been holding so protectively, Keanu opened it to find an old wedding photo, slightly charred around the edges but still intact. The couple exchanged a look of quiet relief, their gratitude unspoken but deeply felt. As he prepared to leave, the old man grasped Keanu's hand firmly. "You didn't have to stop, but you did. You've reminded us that even when everything is lost, kindness can still be found." Keanu smiled humbly and nodded. "Take care of each other. That's what matters most." Driving away, Keanu glanced in his rearview mirror at the couple, now seated side by side on a cot, holding hands. The moment struck him deeply. In their resilience, he saw a reflection of the human spirit, fragile yet unyielding, scarred yet hopeful. It was only the beginning of a long night, but Keanu's resolve had never been stronger. He knew there were countless others out there, waiting for a lifeline, waiting for someone to remind them that even in the darkest of times, they were not alone, and he wasn't going to stop until he found them. As Keanu continued his journey through the smoke-choked streets of Los Angeles, the weight of what he had seen began to settle heavily on his shoulders. Every corner he turned revealed another family in distress, another home reduced to ash, another life forever changed. Yet, amidst the destruction, there were moments that pierced his heart the most: small, quiet moments of resilience that spoke louder than the roaring flames. At one evacuation center, he spotted a young boy sitting on the floor, clutching a scorched teddy bear. His parents stood nearby, talking to a volunteer, their faces etched with worry. Keanu knelt down beside the boy and gently asked, "What's your bear's name?" The child looked up, his tear-streaked face softening slightly. "His name is Teddy. He kept me safe when the fire came." Keanu smiled, his voice steady. "Well, Teddy's a hero, just like you." He pulled a small flashlight from his pocket and handed it to the boy. "This is for you and Teddy, so you can always find your way in the dark." The boy's eyes lit up, and for a brief moment, the fear lifted from his small face. That single moment of connection reminded Keanu why he couldn't stop. It wasn't just about saving lives, it was about restoring hope. As the night wore on, Keanu realized the scope of the disaster was far greater than he could tackle alone. Driving back to his makeshift headquarters, he called a close friend, someone he knew he could count on. "I need help," he admitted. "This is bigger than me. There are so many people who need us." Within hours, the word spread. Friends, colleagues, and even strangers began to rally. Supplies poured in, and volunteers stepped up, ready to make a difference. Keanu didn't just inspire action. He became the heart of a movement. His calm leadership and unwavering determination reminded everyone that even in the face of overwhelming tragedy, a single spark of kindness could ignite a fire of hope. Keanu knew the road ahead would be long, but he also knew he wasn't walking it alone. With every hand extended, every voice lifted, and every heart opened. The fire's devastation was met with humanity's greatest strength, unity. And this was only the beginning. As the days wore on, Keanu's efforts to help those displaced by the fires grew exponentially. But so did the challenges. What began as a one-man rescue mission quickly evolved into a full-scale operation. Volunteers flooded in, eager to assist. But coordinating such a massive network was no simple task. Supplies were scarce, roads were often impassable, and the relentless smoke continued to make breathing difficult. Not to mention the emotional toll the disaster took on everyone involved. Keanu, undeterred by the growing obstacles, dove into the work with renewed determination. His living room, once a sanctuary of solitude, had transformed into a command center, maps pinned to the walls, boxes of supplies stacked high, and a team of volunteers sorting and packing food, clothing, and medical supplies. Every moment felt like a race against time, with more families in need of help than there were resources to provide. Late one evening, after hours of coordinating logistics, Keanu collapsed into a chair, exhaustion weighing heavily on his shoulders. He looked around at the team working tirelessly, their faces drawn but resolute. It was then that one of the volunteers, a young woman named Sarah, approached him with a worried look. "Keanu, we're running out of blankets and food, and the shelters are overflowing. What do we do?" Keanu rubbed his eyes, trying to fight the fatigue. He had known the task would be monumental, but seeing the strain on the faces of those around him made it all the more real. "We keep going," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We find more. We don't stop. We can't." Just as the weight of the situation began to feel unbearable, another volunteer burst through the door, his eyes wide with excitement. "Keanu, you won't believe it. We've got a donation coming in, enough supplies to fill an entire truck. It's from a local business." The room erupted into cheers as the team gathered around the volunteer, their spirits lifting with the news. It was a small victory in the grand scheme of things, but to Keanu, it was proof that even in the face of overwhelming odds, help was always just around the corner. And it wasn't just the supplies. What really made the difference was the sense of community that had begun to take root. Every person who showed up to volunteer, every family who shared their story, every neighbor who offered a hand, it was all part of something much bigger than the fire itself. The community that had once been divided by distance and differences was now united by a common purpose. Keanu watched as people from all walks of life worked side by side, helping those in need without hesitation. It was a testament to the strength of the human spirit, and it fueled his belief that together, they could rebuild not only homes but hearts. As the hours passed and the supplies began to pour in, Keanu felt a surge of hope rise within him. There was so much work left to do, but the impossible suddenly felt within reach. He knew that every day he spent alongside these selfless volunteers was another day they were closer to turning the tide. And as he stepped out into the smoky night, ready for the next mission, he knew one thing for certain: the strength of this community, their resilience and compassion, would light the way forward. Together, they were unstoppable. It wasn't just about getting through the fire, it was about forging something new, something stronger, something that would last long after the flames had been put out. And as Keanu looked around at the faces of those he was fighting for, he knew that the road ahead would be long, but it was a road they would travel together. As the sun began to set, casting an orange glow over the smoke-filled horizon, Keanu found himself at yet another crowded evacuation center. The air buzzed with activity, volunteers handing out supplies, families huddled together on cots, and children clutching what little they had managed to save. Despite the chaos, there was an undercurrent of resilience that was impossible to ignore, a quiet determination shared by everyone in the room. Walking through the center, Keanu's eyes were drawn to a small girl sitting alone near the corner of the room. She clutched a frayed book tightly to her chest, her wide eyes scanning the room with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Keanu approached slowly, kneeling to meet her at eye level. "What are you reading?" he asked gently. his voice cutting through the distant hum of the crowd. The girl hesitated, then held the book out to him. The cover was singed at the edges, but the title was still visible, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. "It's my favorite," she whispered. "It's all I could save." Keanu smiled, carefully thumbing through the pages. "Tom Sawyer. Huh? He's pretty brave. You must be, too, to have kept this safe." The girl's lips curved into the smallest of smiles, and in that moment, the weight of her world seemed to lift just a little. Moments like these, Keanu realized, were what truly mattered. It wasn't just about delivering supplies or coordinating efforts. It was about making people feel seen, understood, and valued, even in the face of overwhelming loss. It was these connections that gave meaning to his work. As the evening stretched on, Keanu met a young couple who had lost their home and were now grappling with the uncertainty of starting over. The wife, cradling an infant, spoke through tears about the life they had built together, now reduced to ashes. Keanu listened intently, his expression soft but resolute. "You've already done the hardest part," he said. "You made it out together. The rest? We'll figure that out, one step at a time." Nearby, he spotted an older man sitting quietly by himself, staring at a faded photograph in his hands. Keanu approached, placing a hand on the man's shoulder. "That someone special?" he asked, nodding toward the photo. The man's voice cracked as he explained it was a picture of his late wife, taken in front of the home they had built together. "She always said our house wasn't just a building, it was a memory," the man murmured. "And now it's all gone." Keanu knelt beside him, his voice steady and warm. "Memories don't burn. They live here," he said, gently tapping his chest. The man's eyes glistened as he nodded, clutching the photograph a little tighter. In every face, every story, Keanu found a thread of humanity that bound them all together. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about reminding people of their strength, their resilience, and their ability to rebuild. These moments of connection weren't grand or dramatic, but they were profound in their simplicity. They were the lifeblood of the community they were working to restore. As the night deepened and Keanu prepared to leave for another supply run, a child ran up to him, pressing something small and warm into his hand, a drawing of a tree with flames around it, but new green shoots sprouting from the base. "For you," the child said shyly. "It's a tree that grows back after a fire." Keanu smiled, his throat tightening. "It's perfect," he said. "Thank you." The drawing stayed in his pocket for the rest of the night, a quiet reminder of why he couldn't stop. These connections, these shared moments of hope and humanity, were the seeds of something far greater than any fire could destroy. Together, they weren't just surviving, they were finding a way to thrive. The fire's relentless advance showed no signs of slowing, and Keanu knew that the next phase of their efforts would push everyone to their limits. The wind had shifted unexpectedly, driving flames closer to areas once thought safe. Reports came flooding in of families trapped in their homes, unable to evacuate in time. Keanu and a small group of volunteers loaded their vehicles with supplies and set out toward the affected zone, determined to make a difference before it was too late. The drive was harrowing. Smoke thickened as they approached the fire line, and the acrid smell burned their throats. Ash rained from the sky, coating the windshields in a grim reminder of the destruction that lay ahead. Keanu gripped the wheel tightly, his eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of movement. Beside him, a volunteer named Lucas kept the radio tuned to the emergency frequency, relaying updates on the fire's unpredictable path. Suddenly, Lucas pointed ahead. There, just beyond the ridge, Keanu squinted through the haze and spotted a small cluster of homes, flames licking dangerously close to their edges. Without hesitation, he turned onto the dirt road leading toward the neighborhood. The air grew hotter with every mile, and the roar of the fire grew deafening. As they arrived, Keanu and his team quickly fanned out, knocking on doors and calling out to anyone who might still be inside. Most of the homes were abandoned, but at one house, they found an elderly woman struggling to gather a few belongings into a suitcase. Her face lit up with relief as Keanu stepped through the door. "Ma'am, we need to go now," he said, his voice firm but kind. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks as she clutched a photo album to her chest. Keanu gently took the suitcase from her trembling hands. "I'll carry this. You just hold on to that album. Okay, let's get you to safety." Outside, the flames were dangerously close, and the heat was almost unbearable. The team worked quickly, loading the woman into a volunteer's car while ensuring everyone in the neighborhood had been evacuated. As they prepared to leave, the wind shifted again, sending a wall of flames racing toward the only road out. Keanu's heart pounded as he realized they were trapped. "Head for that old storage building," he shouted, pointing to a nearby structure that looked sturdy enough to withstand the flames for a time. The group sprinted inside, slamming the heavy doors shut behind them. Inside, the air was stifling, and the light from the fire seeped through cracks in the walls, casting eerie shadows across the room. For hours, they waited, the sound of the fire raging around them. Keanu moved from person to person, checking on everyone and offering words of encouragement. Lucas, pale and visibly shaken, whispered, "What if we don't make it?" Keanu placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "We will," he said firmly. "And when we do, we'll be stronger for it. Just hold on a little longer." To keep spirits up, Keanu started a conversation, inviting everyone to share what brought them to this moment. One volunteer talked about losing their family's farm to a wildfire years ago, while another shared how they had always wanted to give back to the community. As the stories unfolded, the tension in the room began to ease, replaced by a sense of unity. When the fire finally passed and the group emerged into the smoky dawn, they were greeted by the sight of charred earth and smoldering ruins. The road ahead was clear, but the devastation was staggering. Keanu took a deep breath, his resolve hardening as he turned to the group. "We've made it through the worst," he said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion etched on his face. "Now it's time to help the others who still need us." As they returned to the evacuation center, battered but unbroken, Keanu felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced the fire and survived, and now they would channel that strength into rebuilding together. The flames may have taken much, but they had also revealed the true power of human resilience and connection. As the flames receded and the first light of dawn broke through the thick smoke, a fragile quiet settled over the evacuation center. The chaos of the night had given way to an uneasy calm, but despair still lingered in the air. Families huddled together on makeshift cots, their faces etched with exhaustion and loss. Keanu, weary from the night's harrowing ordeal, walked among them, offering quiet reassurances and warm smiles. He knew this wasn't just a battle against fire. It was a battle to restore hope. In one corner of the center, he noticed a boy sitting alone, clutching a small, singed toy truck. His shoulders shook with silent sobs, and his gaze was fixed on the ground. Keanu knelt beside him, speaking softly. "That's a pretty cool truck. What's its story?" The boy looked up, startled, his tear-streaked face betraying both surprise and sadness. "It was my favorite," he whispered. "But the fire, it took my house, and my dog. He didn't make it." Keanu's chest tightened, the boy's pain cutting through him like a knife. He sat down beside him, holding the boy's gaze. "I'm so sorry," he said sincerely. "Losing someone you love is the hardest thing in the world. But you know what? Dogs are amazing. They're brave, loyal, and full of love. I think your dog would want you to be just as brave as he was." The boy sniffled, his grip tightening on the toy. Keanu leaned in, his voice gentle. "How about this? Let's imagine your dog is a hero, running through the mountains, protecting other animals from the fire. Maybe he's helping them find safe places, just like you're safe here." For the first time, the boy's lips curved into a faint smile. "You think so?" he asked. "I know so," Keanu said with a reassuring nod. And one day, when you're ready, you'll do something amazing too, just like your dog." The boy's eyes sparkled with a glimmer of hope, and Keanu ruffled his hair before standing. Nearby, a woman had been watching the exchange. She approached Keanu, her voice trembling. "Thank you," she said. "That's my son. I didn't know how to reach him after everything we lost. But you gave him something to hold on to." Keanu placed a hand on her shoulder. "We all need something to hold on to, and sometimes, it's as simple as knowing we're not alone." As the morning wore on, more moments like this began to unfold. A volunteer discovered an elderly man's cherished keepsake, a pocket watch that had miraculously survived the fire. A mother, overwhelmed with gratitude, burst into tears when Keanu handed her a fresh box of diapers and formula for her infant. Each act, no matter how small, seemed to chip away at the despair that hung heavy in the air. Keanu's presence became a quiet beacon for those who had lost so much. His calm demeanor and heartfelt words reminded everyone that even in the darkest times, there was light to be found. It wasn't just about providing supplies or coordinating logistics. It was about lifting spirits, one person at a time. As the day drew to a close, Keanu stood outside the center, watching the sky shift from orange to blue as the smoke began to clear. A group of children ran past, their laughter breaking through the somber atmosphere like sunshine after a storm. For a moment, the weight on his shoulders felt a little lighter. Hope wasn't a grand gesture or a dramatic moment. It was the quiet resilience of people finding strength in each other. It was the boy smiling through his tears, the mother cradling her baby, the elderly man holding onto his watch. And as Keanu watched the community begin to heal, he knew one thing for certain: even in the face of despair, hope could flourish. It only needed someone to nurture it, and Keanu Reeves was determined to be that someone. As the scale of the disaster became clear, so too did the realization that their efforts needed to grow beyond anything they had imagined. The fires were no longer just a local emergency, they were a citywide crisis, displacing thousands and stretching resources to their breaking point. Keanu, who had started with a single SUV packed with supplies, now found himself leading a growing network of volunteers, businesses, and community leaders, all united by a common goal: to bring relief and hope to those who needed it most. In the days following the worst of the fires, Keanu's makeshift command center became a hub of activity. His home buzzed with energy as volunteers sorted through mountains of donated supplies: blankets, clothing, hygiene kits, and non-perishable food. Friends from the film industry began to step in, offering not just money but also their time and influence. Calls poured in from across the city as people asked, "How can we help?" Keanu worked tirelessly to organize the influx of support. He partnered with local businesses to secure trucks for transporting supplies to evacuation centers. Through his connections, he coordinated with restaurants to provide hot meals for families who had gone days without a proper meal. His living room turned into a war room, with maps of Los Angeles pinned to the walls, marking the hardest-hit areas and planning the most efficient routes for distribution. But it wasn't just about logistics, it was about making every effort personal. Keanu insisted on visiting the evacuation centers himself, not just to oversee the operations but to connect with the people they were helping. At one center, he met a firefighter named Luis, whose team had been working nonstop for 72 hours to contain the flames. Luis's face was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes held a fierce determination. "We've got the flames under control for now," Luis said, "but we're running out of gear. Our gloves are falling apart. And the respirators, they can't keep up with the smoke." Keanu nodded, his mind already racing with solutions. Within hours, he had mobilized his network to secure heat-resistant gloves, new respirators, and even hydration packs for the firefighters. When he delivered the supplies personally, Luis grabbed his hand in a firm shake. "You didn't have to do this," he said, "but you did, and that means everything to us." Meanwhile, Keanu's friends from the industry organized a fundraising campaign that brought in over $1 million in donations. The funds were immediately put to use, purchasing temporary housing for displaced families, medical supplies for pop-up clinics, and essential firefighting equipment. Every dollar spent was a step closer to helping the city recover. Despite the overwhelming workload, Keanu never lost sight of the individual stories. At one point, a young mother approached him with tears in her eyes. "You don't know me," she said, "but you've already changed my life. My family had nothing after the fire, and now we have hope." Her words stayed with Keanu as he continued to expand their efforts. He knew that this wasn't just about providing resources, it was about restoring dignity, faith, and the belief that no one was alone in their struggle. What had started as a single act of kindness had grown into a movement, and Keanu was at its heart, tirelessly working to ensure that every person touched by the flames found a path to healing. And as the days stretched into weeks, the fire-ravaged city began to rebuild, not just its homes, but its spirit. What once seemed insurmountable was now a testament to the power of unity, proving that when people came together with compassion and determination, they could overcome even the greatest of challenges. As the immediate crisis began to subside, the focus shifted from survival to recovery. The flames may have been extinguished, but the scars they left behind were visible everywhere: burned-out homes, blackened landscapes, and countless lives turned upside down. For Keanu, this wasn't the end of his mission. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. He was determined to help rebuild not only what had been lost, but also the dreams that the fire had threatened to destroy. One of the first families Keanu encountered in this new phase of recovery was the Martinezes. They had spent decades building their small bakery, a cornerstone of their community, only to watch it burn to the ground in a matter of hours. When Keanu visited their temporary shelter, he found them sitting together, their teenage daughter sketching designs for cakes they could no longer bake. "This bakery was our life," Mr. Martinez said quietly, his voice heavy with emotion. "It was more than a business, it was our home, our pride." Keanu listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "You still have the most important part," he said, gesturing toward the family. "Your passion, your skills, and your love for each other. Those are things no fire can take away." That conversation sparked an idea. Through his growing network, Keanu arranged for a local construction company to donate materials and labor to rebuild the bakery. He also worked with his industry contacts to organize a fundraiser, where celebrity chefs and bakers showcased their creations to support the Martinez family. Within weeks, the new bakery was standing, better than ever, its doors ready to reopen to a community eager for a taste of normalcy. The Martinezes weren't the only ones to find a path forward. In another neighborhood, Keanu met the Parkers, a young couple with 2 children who had lost everything, including their family's modest home. Their youngest son, Jason, had been drawing pictures of their house every day, trying to hold onto the memory of a life they once knew. When Keanu visited, Jason eagerly showed him one of his drawings, a colorful depiction of a bright yellow house surrounded by flowers. "This is our new house," Jason said, his eyes shining with hope. "It's going to be even better than the old one." Keanu smiled, inspired by the boy's unwavering optimism. "Let's make that happen," he said. With the help of his foundation, Keanu secured funding to rebuild the Parker family's home, complete with a garden for Jason's beloved flowers. When the family moved in, Jason handed Keanu another drawing, a picture of their rebuilt home with the words, "Thank you for our new beginning," written in colorful letters at the bottom. These moments fueled Keanu's vision for something greater. He began working on a long-term plan to help the affected families not just recover but thrive. His foundation launched initiatives focused on building environmentally sustainable homes, providing financial grants to small businesses, and offering job training programs to help people rebuild their livelihoods. At every turn, Keanu emphasized the importance of community. He organized neighborhood cleanup days, where residents came together to clear debris, plant trees, and paint murals that symbolized resilience and renewal. On one such day, He joined a group of children in painting a mural of a phoenix rising from flames, its vibrant colors a testament to their collective strength. As the weeks turned into months, the fire-ravaged neighborhoods began to transform. Where there had once been ashes, there were now new homes, bustling businesses, and thriving communities. And at the heart of it all was Keanu, working tirelessly to ensure that every person who had faced the fire could look to the future with hope. For Keanu, it wasn't just about rebuilding walls or roofs, it was about restoring dreams. And as he walked through those revitalized neighborhoods, seeing the smiles on people's faces and hearing the laughter of children, he knew that their dreams were alive and stronger than ever. The fire had tested them, but it hadn't defeated them. Together, they had proven that even in the face of unimaginable loss, the human spirit could rise again. With the turning point behind them, Keanu and his growing network of volunteers turned their sights toward a vision that extended far beyond rebuilding homes. The disaster had revealed not just the fragility of physical structures but also the vulnerabilities within the community itself, gaps in preparedness, resources, and support that had left so many exposed. Keanu was determined to ensure that these lessons wouldn't be forgotten. If they were going to rebuild, they would do it with purpose, creating a future that was stronger, safer, and filled with opportunity. One of the first steps was the creation of a community resilience program. Working with city officials, environmental scientists, and architects, Keanu spearheaded an initiative to design eco-friendly neighborhoods that could withstand future disasters. These homes were built with sustainable materials, equipped with solar panels, and surrounded by fire-resistant landscaping. But it wasn't just about the buildings, it was about empowering the people within them. At a town hall meeting, Keanu stood in front of a packed room filled with residents eager to hear what was next. His voice carried both determination and hope as he addressed the crowd. We're not just rebuilding structures, we're rebuilding trust, security, and hope. These homes are a symbol of what we've been through, but more importantly, they're a testament to where we're going. The applause was immediate, but what came after was even more powerful. A surge of community members stepping forward to offer their own skills, ideas, and resources. A retired teacher volunteered to run workshops on emergency preparedness. A local carpenter offered to train young adults in construction skills. Bit by bit, the pieces of a stronger, more self-sufficient community began to fall into place. Keanu also prioritized education, knowing that the children who had endured so much were the key to a brighter future. Through his foundation, scholarships were established to ensure that no child would have to put their dreams on hold because of the fire. Schools in the affected areas were provided with new resources, including mental health counselors to help students process their trauma. One day, Keanu visited a newly reopened school and sat in on a class where children were learning about environmental conservation. At the end of the lesson, a girl raised her hand and asked, "Mr. Keanu, do you think we'll ever have another fire like that?" He paused, then knelt to her level, his voice calm but earnest. Fires are a part of nature, but what matters is how we prepare and take care of each other. And with everything we've learned, I believe we'll be ready, because people like you're going to make sure we are. The girl smiled, and Keanu felt a renewed sense of optimism. These children, who had seen so much destruction, were now learning how to protect the world around them. They weren't just survivors. They were becoming stewards of a better future. As the months went on, the impact of Keanu's vision became increasingly clear. Neighborhoods once reduced to ashes now thrived with life and energy. Families who had lost everything were not just surviving but flourishing, supported by a community that had grown stronger through shared adversity. Programs launched through Keanu's foundation provided ongoing training in disaster response, ensuring that every resident felt equipped to face whatever challenges might come. The culmination of these efforts came on a bright spring morning when the community gathered to dedicate a new park at the center of one of the hardest-hit neighborhoods. The park featured a memorial honoring those lost to the fire, but it was also a place of celebration, filled with trees planted by residents, picnic tables hand-built by volunteers, and a playground where children laughed freely. As Keanu stood before the crowd, his heart swelled with gratitude. This park isn't just a reminder of what we've overcome. It's a promise of what we can achieve together. Every tree, every smile, every act of kindness, it's all proof that even in the face of tragedy, we have the power to create something beautiful. The applause was thunderous, but it wasn't the cheers that stayed with Keanu as he walked through the park that day. It was the small moments, the sight of a family planting a tree together, the sound of children playing, the warmth of neighbors embracing, that reminded him why they had fought so hard. This wasn't just recovery, it was renewal, and it was only the beginning of the future they were building together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the park filled with families, volunteers, and survivors, Keanu stood at the center of it all, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The laughter of children echoed through the air, mingling with the soft hum of conversations and the distant rustle of newly planted trees swaying in the evening breeze. It was a moment of peace, a rare stillness that carried the weight of every hardship they had endured and every triumph they had shared. He stepped onto a small stage set up near the memorial, the crowd falling silent as he approached the microphone. The faces before him, young and old, weary and hopeful, were a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Keanu took a deep breath, his voice steady but filled with emotion as he began to speak. When the fires first came, they took so much from us, our homes, our memories, even our sense of safety. For many of us, it felt like the flames would consume everything. But standing here today, looking at all of you, I see something the fire could never destroy. I see strength. I see compassion. I see a community that refused to give up. His words hung in the air, their weight sinking in as the crowd listened intently. Keanu paused, his eyes scanning the faces before him, each one carrying its own story of loss and survival. This journey has shown us that no matter how dark things may seem, there is always light to be found, in a neighbor's helping hand, in the laughter of a child, in the courage to rebuild. And that light doesn't just come from one person, it comes from all of us, working together, lifting each other up. He gestured toward the park around them, the vibrant greenery and joyful energy, a stark contrast to the devastation that had once defined this place. This park is more than just a space. It's a symbol of what we've accomplished together. It's a reminder that even from the ashes, we can create something beautiful, and it's a promise that we will continue to stand by each other, no matter what comes. Keanu's voice softened, but its impact grew stronger. This isn't just my story, it's ours. It belongs to every person who showed up, who gave what they could, who refused to let the fire define us. Together, we've built something extraordinary, not just a community, but a legacy of hope. The crowd erupted into applause, the sound carrying across the park like a wave of unity and gratitude. Keanu stepped back, his heart full, as people began to approach him, families with children, volunteers who had been there from the beginning, and survivors who wanted to share their thanks. He listened to each of them, his humility and sincerity shining through with every interaction. As the evening wore on, Keanu found himself sitting on a bench beneath a newly planted oak tree. A young boy approached him, clutching a small drawing in his hands. It was a picture of the park, vibrant and full of life, with the words, "Thank you for our new home," scrawled at the bottom. Keanu smiled, accepting the drawing with gentle hands. "This is amazing," he said. "Thank you for sharing this with me." The boy beamed, and Keanu watched as he ran back to his family, their laughter filling the air. He leaned back against the bench, gazing at the stars beginning to emerge in the night sky. This moment, this place, was everything he had hoped for, a testament to the power of kindness, the strength of unity, and the unbreakable resilience of the human spirit. As the last of the crowd began to disperse, Keanu rose, walking through the park one final time. His heart was light, his steps steady. This was the legacy they had built together, not just recovery, but renewal, not just survival, but transformation. And though his work here was done, the lessons they had learned and the bonds they had forged would endure long after the fires were forgotten. In the quiet of the night, as the park settled into peaceful stillness, one thought remained clear in Keanu's mind. Even in the darkest moments, humanity has the power to rise, and that is a story worth telling for generations to come. The park was quiet now, bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight. The laughter and voices that had filled the air hours earlier had faded, leaving only the gentle rustling of leaves and the occasional chirp of crickets. Keanu walked slowly along the winding path, his footsteps light against the freshly laid gravel. The memorial stood at the heart of the park, its reflective surface catching the light of the stars above. He stopped before it, his gaze lingering on the engraved names, each one a reminder of the lives lost, the sacrifices made, and the resilience found in the face of unimaginable loss. Keanu placed a hand on the cool stone, his fingers tracing the words etched there. From the ashes, we rise. A faint breeze carried with it the scent of new grass and blooming flowers, a contrast to the smoke that had once choked the air. In that moment, Keanu felt a profound sense of peace. This wasn't just a place, it was a promise, a living testament to what they had built together. And as he stood there, beneath the vast expanse of the night sky, he knew that the spirit of this community would endure long after the park had faded into memory. Turning toward the camera, Keanu's voice softened, carrying the weight of everything he had seen and felt over the past months. "This story isn't about me," he began, his words deliberate and heartfelt. "It's about all of us. It's about the power of compassion, the strength of a community, and the belief that even in the darkest times, we can find light if we choose to create it." He paused, a small smile playing on his lips. "To everyone watching this, I want to say thank you. Thank you for believing in the goodness of people. Thank you for sharing your kindness, your time, and your hope. The journey doesn't end here. Every act of compassion, every moment of connection, it matters, and it's up to all of us to keep that spirit alive." Keanu stepped back, his hands resting at his sides as he took one final look around the park. If this story has touched your heart, let it inspire you to take action. Wherever you are, whatever you can do, know that even the smallest gesture can change someone's life. And when we come together, there's nothing we can't overcome. The camera lingered on him for a moment longer before panning upward, capturing the brilliant stars shining against the endless sky. The image faded to black, leaving only the words, "In the face of tragedy, we found hope. Together, we rose." And with that, the story came to a close, not as an ending, but as a beginning, an invitation to all who heard it to carry the light forward.